Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 537, and today's date is December 9th, 2014, and the title of this episode is False Flag Warning, Islamic State Reports Radioactive Bomb is Already in Europe. Now, we need to understand, why would the Islamic State come out and all of a sudden say, listen, we have pretty much a dirty nuke inside Europe somewhere. It could be in the UK, could be in France, it could be in Spain. We're not going to tell you, but we're going to say it's here someplace. Well, first of all, the scare factor goes way up. And secondly, we have to understand the Islamic State is the proxy army for Israel, for the United States, for UK, and we have to realize that the coalition bombing inside Syria will go absolutely nowhere. You cannot get Assad unless you have boots on the ground, and you have to remember, this is the goal of the United States, Israel, UK, and other nations that are privately that have the private Western central banks. Their goal is to remove Assad. It has never changed. And basically what's happening right now is the Islamic State is maneuvering throughout Syria, and the United States is going in and bombing all the infrastructure inside of Syria. Israel recently helped, and we can see that basically the United States and Israel and the other Arab nations basically are the air force of the Islamic State, if you really want to think of it in these terms. And we can see right now that it is time that they bring in boots on the ground. Now, how are they going to do this? Well, first of all, we have to understand they've commandeered an air base inside Iraq. They've taken it over. They are now setting up a division headquarters that can support 30,000 soldiers. This is all planned and ready to go. They're ready to put boots on the ground. Now, we already understand there are boots on the ground. They call them advisors, and these are really combat-ready Marines. And the only way to convince the people of the private Western Central Bank countries is to say, the terrorists are now maneuvering outside of Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Libya, and they're coming towards the Western countries. They're coming to Europe. They're coming to the United States, and they will do something. And once they do something, you're going to see the government, you're going to see the corporate media, they're going to be broadcasting this all over the place that we need boots on the ground to get this Islamic State. And this is what they're going to be pushing for right now, and they're going to be pushing it very hard. And we'll probably see a lot more stories like this come out, and the Islamic State letting us know what they are doing, because again, this is a proxy army. This is not a terrorist group. This is made up of paid mercenaries. They were trained in Jordan, in Turkey. This is being done on purpose. Why? Because they need a way to get into Syria, and we can see how this is all starting to come together right now, and we're already seeing that they've stolen this radioactive nuclear material, created this dirty bomb, and now they've already smuggled it into Europe, and they're going to do something with it. So we can see right now this is being pushed and pushed really hard. And the question is, why? Well, we have to understand the economies, the private Western Central Bank economies, they are completely falling apart. They are collapsing. They're holding it together with illusionary numbers. They continually manipulate all the statistics. They try to make everyone believe that everything is fine, and they're trying to push the stock market as high as they possibly can. Today it is down. The gold they try to suppress. This is going up today, and we see these fluctuations, but in all, we see it rising to new heights, and this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to get everyone to look at this, to make you believe that we're in a recovery, and another organization like the Islamic State, along with Russia, along with China, along with North Korea, along with Syria, brought our economy to its knees, and this is how they're going to get out of the entire situation, by starting a war. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand out in Europe, and especially in Greece, they wanted to get out of this whole bailout scenario, and they've been trying, and they've been making deals with China, because they realize as they take on more debt from the Eurozone, from IMF, they realize that this is not really helping. It's making the situation worse, because they have to impose austerity as they impose austerity. There's less revenue coming into the country because people lose their jobs. And basically what's happening is they need more and more of this debt, and it's becoming unsustainable, and they cannot sustain this anymore. But it looks like the Eurozone ministers on Monday, they had to approve a request from Greece for a 2-month extension to its bailout program that was set to end on December 31st. A new line of credit became urgent after Athens proposed in October to break free completely of the financial oversight. This spooked the market, which sent Greek borrowing rates to dangerously high levels. And we can see right now, Greece is pretty much falling apart. And if you remember when they bailed out Greece right from the beginning and they told us that everything is fine, there's nothing to worry about, this will not spread. But we are seeing it spread. We're seeing it's getting worse in Greece. It spread to Cyprus. It spread to France. It spread to Portugal. It spread to Spain. Spread to Italy. And all of these countries are having a very rough time. And now it's a domino effect, which is now leading into UK, into Germany, and into other countries. It is not ending. In the UK, they had a huge surprise that UK factory output slumped after all. And it basically slumped in pharmaceuticals and electronics. It dipped around 0.7% in October, and it is the biggest monthly decline since May, with a 4.5% drop in computer, electronic, and optical parts. Britain's factories suffered an unexpected slump in October following a sharp fall in the production of pharmaceuticals, electronics, and computer parts. And we can see from the Baltic Dry Index, which is an indicator of all the raw material that factories use. We see the Baltic Dry Index continually falling as time goes on. It is under 1,000 points right now, and it is way down from the high right before the Great Recession of 2008, when it hit 11,000 points, and after that it hit its low point right after the Great Recession of down to 672 points. And then again the markets and everything was pumped up once again, and people were ordering from the factories because everything was being pumped up by the central banks, and now they can't hold it together anymore. There was quantitative easing where they were funneling in free money, buying up toxic real estate, pumping it into hedge funds and investment companies to go out and purchase homes, pumping it in so the construction spending would go up and people would start building houses and apartment buildings and automobiles. And this is why the Baltic Dry Index started to rise again. But now they can't continue on with this. Things are really starting to fall apart, and it's getting harder and harder to keep the economies going of the private Western central bank countries. Now we realize that gold and silver have been pushed down quite a bit. And they're doing this on purpose because they don't want people to understand and realize that, yes, gold and silver, the precious metals, they are real money. And if they see gold and silver start to rise, they're going to scratch their heads and say, why is this rising? That means the dollar is decreasing. So we can see right now they're doing this for that purpose. The other purpose is that the central banks and countries around the world are trying to purchase gold like there's no tomorrow, because basically there's going to be no tomorrow because the collapse is coming, war is coming, and they realize they need to stock up on gold, and they're trying to push the price down as far as they possibly can to get as much as they possibly can. We see the American Eagle silver bullion coins are poised to surpass 2013's historic sales record. Year-to-date sales of 42.37 million ounces are within reach of 2013 annual sales of 42.68 million ounces. Given the first week of December sales being about 821,000 ounces, last year's record should topple this week. There are several reasons behind this surge of demand. Silver prices are at a very attractive dollar amount right now. It's anywhere between $16 and $17 per ounce, and this is very, very low, and people are taking advantage of this. They're not selling it like they thought they were going to do. They were hoping if they continually push down gold and silver, people would say, oh, okay, everything's going down, and I'm going to sell everything that I have here. And actually the opposite is happening. People are going out and they're buying it. They're buying gold. They're buying silver. As the price goes down, basically it's a red flag saying it's on sale right now. You better get in on the precious metals before everything falls apart and these things go skyrocketing to the moon. And this is what everyone is doing right now. Okay. Now, we've talked about bail-ins before. We know there's a bail-in document that was created by the FDIC and the Bank of England, and then it was copied off to many other nations, Switzerland, the Eurozone, Canada, Australia, and we can see that now that the central bankers are getting ready for a major bail-in. And we have to remember the FDIC Bank of England document that was created, it was created back in December of 2012 before the Cyprus incident, and that was a definite test right now. But we see that banks now are telling customers to move their cash out of their accounts or be charged fees. Now, these aren't the small customers. These are the customers that have over 250,000 or even more than that. The banks including JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, HSBC Holding, Deutsche Bank, Bank of America, and many others have spoken privately with clients in recent months to tell them that a new regulation making some deposits less profitable, and they need to take their money out or they'll be charged a fee. In some cases, the banks have told clients, which range from large companies to hedge funds, insurers, and smaller banks, that they will begin charging fees on accounts that have been free for big customers. Now, it does sound strange that they're going to charge fees for someone having a large amount of money, or I should say currency, in the banks. The new charges will start January 1st in 2015. And this is on U.S. accounts. The new U.S. rules designed to make bank balance sheets more resistant to the types of shocks that contributed to 2008 financial crisis will likely have little effect on retail deposits insured up to $250,000 by Federal Deposit Insurance. But the rules do affect larger deposits that often come from big corporations, smaller banks, and big financial firms such as hedge funds. Hundreds of companies and other bank customers with deposits that exceed the insurance limit could be affected by the bank's actions. Overall, about $4 trillion in deposits at banks in the U.S. were uninsured, covering more than 3.5 million accounts, according to the FDIC. The banks are required to maintain enough high-quality assets that could be converted into cash during a crisis to cover a projected flight of deposits over 30 days. Some argue that while it is a good policy on its face, the rule potentially magnifies problems in a recession by encouraging banks to hoard high-quality assets, potentially paralyzing markets for these assets such as Treasury securities and some corporate bonds. This proposal, which is supposed to promote financial stability, actually does the opposite, said Thomas Quadman, a vice president of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The second unintended, or perhaps perfectly intended, consequence is that, just like with money market fund reform, the underlying driver behind NIRP and all other forced capital reallocations is to push money on the sidelines away from the inert mode and into equities, into the stock market, in the process lifting the aggregate value of equities and pushing the world's biggest stock and bond bubble to unprecedented heights. And we can see they are trying to do this at this point. And again, they want the big money moved out of the banks. This way they don't have to hold a certain number of assets to cover this during a recession. The smaller deposit they don't really care about because the FDIC would cover that. But you have to remember, all of these bank deposits are not covered by the FDIC if there is a cyber attack. Only if the bank fails. So if there is a cyber attack and they need to lock down the bank and take the money to stay afloat, it is not a bank failure. This is what happened in Cyprus, and we can see they are planning for this once again. But of course, before they do this, they want to pump up the stock market even higher, and they want to get that money out of the bank and into equities, and this is exactly what they're trying to do. Now, it seems like the economic outlook for European banks in 2015 will be hampered by weak profits, risks of bail-ins, and litigation charges. Moody's Investors Service announced on Monday weak macroeconomic conditions will continue to weigh on Europe's banking sector in 2015, and banks' low overall profitability implies that Europe's banking remains structurally vulnerable. The truth is that banks in most Western nations are vulnerable to bail-ins in 2015, and the recent G20 meetings in Brisbane was a further move towards the stealth bail-in regime. The move by Western nations toward bail-in regimes whereby too-big-to-fail banks confiscate individual and company deposits has been put in place with very little public discussion or awareness of the risk and ramifications of bail-ins. Europe admitted that bail-ins of deposits was going to be the new normal. And we see from that G20 meeting that yes, those people that have deposits in the bank, you're no longer a depositor, you are a creditor. So it makes no difference that you think that your money is safe in the bank. When it comes time to take it, they will take it with a bail-in. They will replace it with a certificate stock, and they will put that into your account, and they will take your currency. The same thing happened to Cyprus. They told them that they would only take about 8 to 10%, and as time went on, that number went to 20%, it went to 30%, and then finally the average was about 47%. They replaced their currency with worthless bank stock, and they were under capital controls for more than a year where they couldn't take out money, transfer money. And we can see the same thing will happen here in the United States and in Europe and other countries because they have been preparing for this for a very long time. Now, as we know, Obamacare is completely and utterly not for the people. It is only for the insurance companies. It's for government officials to make a huge amount of money off of the healthcare industry, and it is to bring in revenue from the taxes that are intertwined in Obamacare. And what we're seeing is a lot of doctors don't want to be on the Obamacare plan. Most doctors consider themselves at full capacity or overextended, and they don't want to join up to Obamacare. A new report from the Associated Press confirmed that at least some Obamacare consumers are struggling to find doctors. When Olivia Pappas signed up for a new health plan last year, her insurance company assigned her to a primary care doctor. The relatively healthy 61-year-old didn't try to see the doctor until last month, when she and her husband both needed authorization to see separate specialists. She called the doctor's office several times without luck. Then they told me they were not on the plan, they were never on the plan, and they've been trying to get their name off the plan all year, said Papa, who recently bought a plan from a different insurance company. It was no better with the next doctor she was assigned to, and this went on, and there's a lot of people that are reporting the same thing, that they can't find a doctor even though they have the insurance. And again, we have to remember these insurance plans, they have gone up in price, the premiums are going up, this is not affordable, and there are penalties and taxes with this. And we can see right now from Gruber's testimony, and of course he's the one who said that Americans are stupid, they won't know what's going on, they don't have to understand what's going on, and he is being grilled by Congress right now. Obamacare architect Jonathan Gruber admitted to the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee that Obamacare contained tax hikes, contradicting the Obama administration narrative that it was not a tax. And we all know it's a tax because it's on your tax form. I mean, you're penalized if you do not take health care. It's a tax. When Congressman Mike Turner pressed Gruber on the issue of Obamacare taxes, the former health care advisor under oath conceded that the unpopular health care law included some taxes. Basically, it is completely a tax, period. That's what it was designed to do, to bring in revenue into the government and, of course, make the insurance companies very, very wealthy. Now, we know the government, we understand these central bankers want to do away with our rights, and they're doing this very slowly. They're trying to convince the next generation of children that rights are privileges. They set up the cages where you can speak freely, and that's where you have to go. Now, of course, nobody's listening to the government. No one's listening to the central bankers, and they're also trying to remove our right to have weapons. And we can see right now that everything that they tried to do with Sandy Hook, they tried with other shootings around the country, everything seemed to fail to get Congress to pass legislation, and the gun bills, they always seem to stall in the Senate. Nothing got moved, nothing happened, and right now some 200 U.S. state lawmakers from all over the country have launched a nonpartisan effort to fight gun violence in the United States because they say Congress has failed to do so. So they're pushing this law very, very hard. Now, there are some states that went ahead and they implemented these draconian laws which are completely unconstitutional. One such state is New York, and basically they call their law the SAFE Act. And the state has now identified about 278 licensed gun owners who may lose their guns due to the state deeming them mentally unstable. Last week, the Syracuse Post-Standard reported that the state of New York has collected about 38,000 names of persons who are believed to be at-risk patients for owning a gun. This information comes from mental health providers. Among those, 737 of those identified are from central New York. However, less than 1% of those identified have a gun permit. So what happens when a person has been deemed to be mentally unstable, to possess a firearm? Once we get the notification, we immediately suspend the permit in order to protect the public. These people cannot get a permit now since they are mentally unstable. And if you owned a weapon and they look at your health records and they say you're mentally unstable, your weapon is taken away. Judge issues the orders without ever viewing the mental health report. So what exactly identifies a person as too mentally unstable? Basically, nobody knows. Apparently, judges don't care, and neither do the sheriffs. They all just assume they are protecting the public, though they don't have any evidence that what they are doing is lawful. And basically, they're just going out saying, yes, this is an order. You cannot have a weapon. But what we're seeing, this could go even further. I mean, they start using these health records. They can say, well, okay, you can't drive machinery, you can't drive a car, you can't work at this certain job, and this can go on further than just weapons. And again, what proves that this person is mentally unstable? This is just a workaround to get around the Second Amendment. And we have to understand is they have created over 2,000 laws to get around the Second Amendment. And we have to remember the rights of the people. This is the law of the land. Nothing can override this. And again, these people have the right to bear arms, and these laws are completely null and void. Now, as we know, the president has been telling us that he's going to rein in the NSA, that he will not allow them to spy on the American people. And again, this is in complete violation of the Fourth Amendment. I mean, they don't have to rein in anything. All you have to do is recite the Fourth Amendment, and they're just not allowed to do this. This whole thing should be taken apart. But back in March, Attorney General Eric Holder was promising that the Justice Department was on track to reform the NSA surveillance powers by the deadline of March 28th. Less than 2 weeks later, it didn't happen. They gave themselves a 90-day extension. That 90 days came and went. Then there was another 90-day extension, and that came and went, and basically nothing happened because they need to spy on the American people. This is who they are spying on. They're spying on the American people, judges, certain government officials, because if these people aren't doing what they want, they will blackmail them, just like the judge for Obamacare, where all of a sudden he says, okay, I think Obamacare is constitutional, and he said it is fine. And we can see right now they are also spying on every single American because they need to realize and understand who is a threat to their authority. They are creating social profiles, which include facial recognition, fingerprints, iris scans. They're going to come into compliance with the Real ID that DHS is setting up, and every single state has to come in compliance with. And basically, this will be your new identification card. There will be a barcode, an RFID chip on it. It will track you wherever you go, and this will be the identification of every single person, and the social profile will follow you around. They will trade this information with other countries, so this way they can see where you're going, when you're going, and who you're meeting. And this is all being done on purpose because welcome to the police state. Now, we understand the CIA torture report came out already, but before the report came out, the Pentagon put tens of thousands of U.S. soldiers on high alert, including Marines, Special Operation Forces, ahead of the release of the Senate Intelligence Committee report on the torture of prisoners at CIA black site prisons around the world. And we understand they did this on purpose, and I believe they released this right at this specific time because what is going on in Syria and Iraq, and we have this terrorist group called the Islamic State that is out there causing havoc on the people in these countries. And of course, as we know, they are a proxy army of the United States, Israel, UK, and other Arab nations. And they wanted this to come out right now because they wanted to really push the idea that these groups will attack the United States because the United States has been torturing people. And the report right now is blaming the CIA, that the CIA lied to the Congress. CIA provided inaccurate information about the effectiveness and scope of the interrogations of a suspected terrorist and mismanaged a program that was far more brutal than represented, according to a 6-year investigation by the Democrats. Interrogation techniques weren't effective, didn't produce key information that led to the killing of Osama bin Laden. And as we know for a fact that Osama bin Laden died of kidney failure in 2001. The Marines did not get him. That burial at sea was completely fake. That photo of President Obama and everyone else in that room was a complete staged photo. The CIA provided inaccurate information to White House, Congress, Department of Justice, and the CIA Inspector General, media, and the public. And we can see right now they're shifting the blame away from themselves and onto the CIA. Now, the CIA torture report reveals tactics worse than agency let on. Al-Qaeda suspects were kept awake in stressed positions for about 180 hours. One suspect died of hypothermia while naked, chained to a floor. At least 5 CIA detainees were subjected to rectal feeding as a method of behavioral control. Detainee Majid Khan had his head below his torso and his lunch of hummus, pasta sauce, and raisins pureed and rectally infused. Detainees in the dungeon were constantly shackled in isolation, complete darkness with constant loud music, and only a bucket for human waste. One interrogator told a detainee he would never go to court because we can never let the world know what I have done to you. The enhanced interrogation techniques did not thwart terrorist plots or reveal the identities of key players in terrorist groups because we know who the terrorists are. It's all an inside job. So all this terror, all these torturing and all this has nothing to do with anything because Al-Qaeda was created by the CIA. The Islamic State was created by Israel, United States, UK, and other Arab nations. So all this torturing is completely a waste of time. Obama said in response to the report, "I will continue to use my authority as president to make sure we never resort to these methods again." Well, we can tell he's lying already because everything they say is always the opposite. He told us that they were going to rein in the NSA. Did that happen? Absolutely not. Oh, wait. He told us that the Affordable Care Act was going to be affordable for the people. People wouldn't lose their health insurance. People wouldn't lose their doctors. All a lie. We're not going to put boots on the ground in Iraq, and we see boots now being put on the ground. The brutal interrogations took place at either CIA-run secret prisons known as black sites or the Guantanamo Bay U.S. military base in Cuba. Senator Dianne Feinstein, who led committee, said, "Examining mistakes and remedying them is the mark of the great and just society." Well, they all knew this was happening. Now they're all covering themselves, making sure they're not put into prison because we have to look at this very carefully. The United States War Crimes Act of 1996, a federal statute set forth at 18 U.S.C. 2441, makes it a federal crime for any U.S. national, whether military or civilian, to violate the Geneva Convention by engaging in murder, torture, or inhuman treatment. The statute applies not only to those who carry out the acts, but also to those who order it or know about it, or fail to take steps to stop it. The statute applies to everyone, no matter how high and how mighty they are in the government. It makes no difference. They're all the same. The 18 U.S.C. 2441 has no statute of limitations, which means that war crimes complaint can be filed at any time. And we can see right now, from what has been going on, will anybody be charged with torture crime? I mean, think about the number of people that knew about this, that knew exactly what was going on. Will anyone be charged? Most likely not. Okay, now, out in Ukraine, we understand there is a ceasefire going on right now, and we understand the South Stream pipeline. That project is dead in the water, and a new pipeline is going to Turkey. But Russia now is building that pipeline, and it's going to connect it to Crimea with the Krasnodar territory of Russia, and this should be done by 2018. So Crimea will be receiving gas from this pipeline that they are creating, which will bypass Ukraine completely, and they will be getting their gas from there. Now, out in Ukraine, it seems like there are more protests on the streets. About 5,000 people in the central Ukrainian took to the streets to demand the resignation of the regional council. Protesters want an investigation into recent clashes, which residents called a provocation. On Monday, protesters occupied the central square and blocked nearby roads in the hometown of the Ukrainian president. The activists held banners saying, "Gather for the sake of peace." The rally participants called for the Ukrainian authorities, including Poroshenko, Yatsenyuk, to investigate the clashes that occurred in the city between December 6th and the 7th. And we know most likely nothing will come about this, but we have to remember Poroshenko is very nervous about the people, and again, the economy is falling apart. The people are suffering there. They do have gas coming in now from Russia. It looks like Ukraine folded, and President Putin said, even though the full payment is not there, let's turn on the natural gas to the country so people there do not freeze. And we can see right now he is allowing the people of Ukraine, and he is showing the world that he is not this type of person that will let people freeze, even though the government didn't pay its bill. Now, we know Ukraine is completely falling apart. Gold was stolen. Their currency is completely in a sharp decline. So, Ukrainian Prime Minister Yatsenyuk said on Tuesday the government would look into conducting audits of state companies with a view to selling stakes on international markets. So basically, they're slicing and dicing the country and corporations and selling them off to bring in funds. We will introduce a mechanism of auditing all state companies according to international standards and to sell stakes on international markets, he told government meeting. And we can see already they are getting desperate, and they're pushing to sell whatever they possibly can to bring in revenue and money into the government, because they are losing their reserves. The economy is falling apart, and they are getting more and more debt from the IMF. Now, we understand today, December 9th, is a day of silence in Ukraine. And it's funny how Poroshenko decided to do this right before the Human Rights Day, which is on December 10th. This year's theme, Human Rights 365, basically long-standing Western tool, Kan Ki-moon, calling on states to honor their obligation to protect human rights every day of the year. Poroshenko's so-called Day of Silence is pretty much meaningless. He violated agreed on Geneva and Minsk ceasefire terms straight away. Day of Silence agreement was reached with no preconditions. Ceasefire terms to be discussed in Geneva, originally scheduled on December 9th, now postponed to December 12th. But what's very interesting about all of this is that guess who's not invited to the talks? The people of Lugansk. They have not received an invitation to participate in the talks on this ceasefire. So is the ceasefire going to be held on December 12th? We don't know at this time. Now, there are reports where Ukraine, Kiev, is out there saying that the rebels are violating the Day of Silence, and the rebels are out there saying, well, Kiev is violating the Day of Silence. And we can see right now that both sides are going to be going back and forth, and we can see that we will never know who really started it. But as we know, as the track record of Kiev, we can see their mission is to get the southeastern portion of Ukraine and Crimea, because they lost this area. The central bankers did not get what they paid for, and he has strict instructions to go ahead and get these areas. Now, Ukraine is trying to form a free trade zone with Canada, Turkey, Israel, and West Africa. They're trying to put this together. We'll have to follow that to see how that goes. The first energy supplies to Europe will come from the Caspian region. They are going to bypass Russia, and they're hoping to do this by 2019. This is how Europe is going to try to get the gas, and this is going to be coming from the Southern Gas Corridor, and this will begin by 2019, and this is coming from the European Commission for Energy Union. We need to explore alternative options to South Stream to ensure energy supply. The most important projects to be completed as soon as possible. So they're moving ahead, trying to get around Russia, and they do not want to receive any type of gas from Russia, because where are we headed? That is right. We are headed towards war. Now, the U.S. has pretty much expanded their military presence in the Spanish naval base. The U.S. Defense Department has announced the addition of 2 more ballistic missile ships to its base in Europe, with up to 3,000 more servicemen being deployed. The U.S. is increasing military presence at its naval base in Rota, southern Spain, adding 2 more ships equipped with the Aegis ballistic missile defense system to its fleet. The BMD system is fitted with anti-ballistic missiles capable of hitting targets at short range inside the Earth's atmosphere and short to intermediate range targets above the atmosphere. U.S. military officials said in the press release that, as well as having proximity to areas such as Libya, West Africa, the Middle East, ships based in the port are also closer to the Black Sea that the USS Ross entered in September to reassure NATO allies in the wake of Russia's annexation of Crimea and its aggression in Eastern Europe. So they are pre-positioning all these ships because they realize they're going to be going back into Libya, Lebanon, and Yemen, and eventually they'll need these ships there because we will be going to war with Russia. Now, out in Egypt, it seems like the Western embassies, amid threat of an al-Qaeda-aligned attack, have been suspending operations in Egypt. At least 2 Western embassies have closed, while others were restricted operations in Cairo. In a 24-hour period, Britain and Canada said they were closing their embassies for security reasons. Terrorist attacks could occur at any time, anywhere in Egypt, including in tourist areas, and this is coming from the Australian embassy. The U.S. embassy, the largest in the city, has remained open in Cairo, but the embassy has warned staffers to stay close to home and be very observant of your surroundings. Now, we have to remember, why is all this happening at this time? Remember, Egypt and Russia, they're in the middle of peace talks with Syria and the opposition forces, the rebel forces, and they're trying to put together a peace deal. And guess what? The United States, the Arab nations, Israel, UK, they don't want a solution to this. They want to get Assad, period. Now, the Iraqi Prime Minister, al-Abadi, told U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel on Tuesday that his army is taking the offensive against the Islamic State group, but needs more air power and heavy weaponry to prevail. And we'll have to watch the United States government and see if they provide these type of weapons. Right now, they're saying that they don't need the weapons. They just need better leadership in the country. Now, I talked about the UN where they were stopping the food to the Syrian refugees. What it looks like, they found more money, they raised more funds, and Rome will resume food aid to Syrian refugees in neighboring countries following a push for more funding when a program offering food vouchers ran out of money. The World Food Program announced on Tuesday about 1.7 million refugees in Jordan, Turkey, Lebanon, Iraq, Egypt will have their electronic food vouchers topped up by mid-December so they can purchase food in local shops. And we can see that food is coming and flowing back into all these countries, even Syria. Now, it seems like, and we know that the United States, Israel, they're in there and they're destroying the infrastructure inside of Syria. This is all being planned. This is all being done on purpose. the coalition forces are battling the terrorist group, the Islamic State. Why is Israel conducting attacks directly against the government of Syria then, while providing de facto sanctuaries for the Islamic State terrorists and their affiliates along their border with Syria and the occupied Golan Heights? It would appear to the casual observer that Israel, Al-Qaeda, and the Islamic State are in fact in league, and we know they are. And the conflict raging within Syria is instead a proxy war being waged from beyond its borders rather than solely within them. Israel's ties to militants are long documented. The Jerusalem Post has recently published accusations by the Syrian government stating that the Israeli government is aiding Al-Qaeda, including al-Nusra and ISIS, in its report titled Head of Syrian Army After Alleged Airstrikes, Israel Working with the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, the Post states. Now we can see right now, and we know the United States government, Israel, UK, they're all working together. This is the proxy army, and they're using them to clear out certain areas. And the United States, Israel, the coalition forces, the Arab nations, they are the air force for the Islamic State. And we can see exactly what they're trying to do at this time. Their mission is to get Assad, period. Now, we understand there are advisors in Iraq, but we have to try to figure out how many are there. Now, corporate media keeps telling us, oh, there's 2,100. There's maybe up to 3,000. Well, when you count up everything, there's a total number of about 4,600 advisors in Iraq at this time. And this means that there's going to be a lot more headed in that area. And it seems like the corporate media, the government, is downplaying their numbers. But there's a lot more advisors, or I say combat-ready Marines, already in that country. Now, the FBI is out there, and they're saying they cannot confirm that North Korea actually hacked Sony. They have no proof whatsoever, but of course the corporate media was out there trying to convince everyone that yes, it was North Korea, and they just wanted to do this so it would sink in everyone's mind that North Korea is one of those nations that would hack the United States, and they were demonizing that country just like they're demonizing Russia, China, Iran, Syria, and many other nations. Now, McAfee is out there. They're saying 2015, that is going to be the year for cyber warfare. We're going to see an increase of cyber warfare, hacking, along with new strategies from hackers to steal sensitive data without leaving any trace. According to the report, small nations and terror groups will become even more active and will attack by launching crippling distributed denial of services attacks or using malware that wipes the master boot record to destroy their enemies' networks. Now, we understand that many of these attacks here are being done on purpose from the inside. The reason for this is that they have to convince everyone that these attacks are coming from other countries to cover up this collapse. We have this report from the Islamic State saying that they have a radioactive device now in Europe. It is hidden, and they're getting ready to use this. An alleged weapons maker from the Islamic State claims that a radioactive device has been smuggled into an undisclosed location in Europe, and of course this is coming from from an intelligence brief released by Site Intelligence Group, which is an Israeli intelligence site run by Rita Katz, and basically all of this information is never backed up anywhere, and it is all propaganda that they are creating to convince everyone that this is going to happen. Now, will this happen? Yes, down the line it will. This will be a false flag event, and we will see many of these because they need to get boots on the ground in these countries. They need to cover up this economic collapse, and this will not be the only one that we will see. We will see many of these occur. We will see them here in the United States. There will be cyber attacks. They will bring down the financial institutions. There will be power outages. There will be physical attacks. They will do this when they are ready to bring the war on. And they're going to do this to cover up this major, major economic collapse. And this is why every single person continually needs to be prepared, because we do not know exactly when it is coming. But what we do know, it is coming very soon. We are tracking the economy. We realize it is falling apart. We realize The illusionary numbers are separating themselves from the real economic indicators, and we can tell we are getting closer and closer, and this is why everyone needs to be prepared. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.